Well, now back to the incredible story of Melbourne student Hadi Nazari, who survived 13 days in the wilderness. It's captured national headlines. But what does it take to survive days on end in the great outdoors? Darren Edwards is the founder of Trail Hiking Australia and joins us now in the studio. Darren, thanks so much for coming in.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
First of all, what was going through your mind as a really experienced hiker when you heard that Hadi went missing and then the search that just went on for 2 weeks?
There's always a lot of questions that I'm hoping we'll get the answers to. I think it's really, really important for these type of stories to understand exactly what happened, what he did, so that it can help other people in the future. So that I've got a lot of questions about why he was separated from the group, why they didn't wait for him. There's so much in those 13 days that has possibly happened that only he will know at this point. And I think it'd be really useful for all of us to understand exactly what's gone on. And because I mean, the typical thing when you get lost is for people to say, well, stay put in one location. Whereas he's obviously moved around a lot into different situations and found the hut and found food, and they've managed to find gear along the way. You sort of have those questions about why he's left gear, why he didn't just stay still, why he has kept moving and made the decision to self-rescue. So, I'm really hopeful that all those answers will come out so that we can all learn a lot. Because I think it's really important in these situations not to look at him and judge him and criticise his actions, because none of us really know what we would do in those same situation. But to look at it so that it can prevent further incidents like this from occurring.
Darren, you're an experienced hiker. What are some of the essential things that you take with you that you would recommend other people do as well?
I'll talk about day hikes, because there's a difference between when you go on a day hike as opposed to an overnight or a multi-day hike. But the bare essentials you should always have with you would be a hiking pack, adequate water and food, adequate clothing as well. It's very easy, particularly in Victoria, to head out on a nice sunny day like today and say, well, I've only got shorts and t-shirts and I might take a hat, but to head out and then all of a sudden the hike's taken longer than you expected it to. Now you're caught after dark, the temperature's dropped and you're freezing cold, and that's where the risk of hypothermia and things like that sort of set in. So for anyone heading out with clothes, it's really important to have a whole range of layers. So I'll have, any day I'll have rain jackets, I'll have wind protection. I mean, you don't have to go overboard, but just enough that you've got shelter if things turn bad. I'll also always carry a torch with me, a whistle. I think torch is really important because quite often people underestimate the time that a hike takes. So they might think, well, it's only 5 or 6 kilometres, I'll smash that out in 2 or 3 hours, and all of a sudden it's 7 hours later and they're still finding their way in the dark, which quite often results in a rescue. So having a torch is really useful. Having a whistle is useful. I'll also always take navigation aids with me, and whether that be, there's a lot of different devices around, from map and compass to GPS, through to mobile phone apps, and I think it's very important not to just settle on one. It's always good to have that redundancy. I know some people sort of take 3 different forms of navigation.
Wow.
I'll always have my phone app, my compass, a map if it's going to an area that I'm unfamiliar with. And occasionally I'll also take a GPS, whether that be a watch or a handheld device, just so you've got that redundancy if something goes wrong. And a personal locator beacon, you've heard a lot about those. They're really important. I think they're often promoted as something that you would take with you on a backcountry hike or something into a remote area. My wife and I carry a PLB, we each have one, and we always carry them on every hike that we do, even if it's just a 3 or 4 hour walk in a local park that we know. You never know if you're going to get bitten by a snake, you never know if you're going to fall and twist an ankle or have an injury that means that you can't self-rescue. So it's really important to have a personal locator beacon to be able to activate that as soon as you can to allow rescue, search and rescue to find you. And while we're on PLBs, I think it's also very important that I've had people say to me, because this sort of introduces the concept of planning before you actually head out on the trail. I've had people say to me, well, I've got a PLB, I don't need to really think much about the planning because that's what search and rescue is there for. So I can push my boundaries, I can go out there knowing that I've got this, I'll call it a get out of jail free card when things go wrong. And while I encourage everyone to carry a PLB with them, I also encourage everyone before you even put your pack on your back and your hiking gear on, is to do a lot of planning beforehand and ask yourself a lot of questions about the trail selection, whether it's suitable for you, and really assess your own abilities.
Darren, speaking of sort of what you're packing, you've got your backpack there. So that's not, if you hold it up, it's not a huge pack for what you saying that you're putting.
This is actually more than what I would.
Enough, but you know.
Yeah, this is actually more than. This is a 40-litre pack, or expansive 40. The one I normally take with me is about 11 litres, so it's
just hold it up a bit more.
It's quite significantly smaller. The reason I brought this one is I've got my boots in there as well, and a few other things. But so I've packed in this all the essentials that I would take with me on a day hike, and that's everything from sort of a water bottle to. We've spoken about the personal locator beacons, so I'll grab one out just to show how
they're really light.
Tiny they are.
Yes.
I bought one for my partner who does a lot of trail running, and it gives me a lot of peace of mind, I have to say. And the other thing I think as well is telling someone where you're going before you go. Absolutely,
and I think that's one of the most important things is letting someone know. It's super easy to head out on thinking I'm just going out for 2 or 3 hours, and my wife does this quite a lot. She'll head out for the evening and just go for a walk after work out in the bush, but she'll always say to me, "This is where I'm going. This is the route that I'm taking." So
super important.
If she doesn't come back by a certain time, I then know to go and start looking for her or raise the alarm.
Darren Edwards, thank you so much for coming in. And I think one of these things, these stories, it does make us all think twice, hopefully, and all those good planning tips from you. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.